Korean Americans today make up one of the fastest growing Asian communities in the United States. They range from Koreatown in Los Angeles to New York and Atlanta. This large community didn't appear overnight. However, it grew through three powerful waves of immigration, each shaped by history, politics, and the search for opportunities. The first wave from 1903 to 1944. The first wave of Korean immigration began in 1903, when Korea was under heavy oppression by Imperial Japan. The first large group of about 100 Korean immigrants arrived in Hawaii. They came to work on sugar plantations, drawn by the promises of stability during a time of turmoil back in Korea. But just 2 years later, Japan annexed Korea and cut off most Koreans from leaving. And for those who were already in Hawaii, returning home was nearly impossible. So they stayed and began to rebuild their lives on unfamiliar soil. The work was grueling. Days started before sunrise in the fields, and conditions were harsh. Many laborers felt deceived by recruiting agents who had painted a picture of easy prosperity. Yet, even in these hardships, the early immigrants demonstrated their remarkable resilience. They organized farming cooperatives, created Korean language schools, and supported one another through churches. Churches became the beating heart of these early communities. They were not just places of worship, but spaces where cultural traditions, language, and national pride survived. Many Koreans also became politically active, joining independence movements to free Korea from oppressive Japanese rule. Political figures like An Jang-ho and Syngman Rhee worked from the U.S. to raise awareness, funds, and diplomatic pressure for their homeland's liberation. By the 1930s, Korean immigration slowed almost to a stop. Racist immigration laws like the 1924 Immigration Act barred Asian Americans altogether. Still, small, tight-knit communities survived and preserved their heritage while assimilating to a country that did not yet fully accept them. The second wave from 1945 to 1964. Japan surrendered in 1945 ended its control over Korea, but liberation quickly turned to chaos within Korea. The Korean War began and devastated the peninsula and split it into north and south along the 38th parallel, with Soviet forces in the north and American forces in the south. During the war came the second wave of Korean immigration. One key group in this wave were Korean war brides, women who married American servicemen and moved to the U.S. under special provisions. While they built families and raised bicultural children, they often faced loneliness, language barriers, and discrimination. Yet they became quiet pioneers of the Korean presence in post-war America. At the same time, a large number of war orphans were adopted by American families. Programs like the Holt Adoption Program that were founded in the 1950s made this possible. These children became some of the first Korean adoptees in U.S. history, transforming the notion of international and transracial adoption. Each story reflected the global reverberations of the Korean War and how the conflict reshaped family, identity, and belonging. The McCarran-Walter Act of 1952 reopened America's doors to Asians and loosened quotas for immigration. This allowed a small number of Korean professionals and students to enter. By the 1960s, Korean immigration was still limited, but these early arrivals became critical community builders. They founded churches, language schools, and support organizations that would later help integrate a much larger wave of immigrants after 1965. The third wave from 1965. The third and largest wave began after the Immigration of Nationality Act of 1965. This landmark law ended race-based quotas and opened doors to a new generation of immigrants from the late 1960s through the 1980s. Tens of thousands of Koreans arrived in the U.S., driven by hopes for education and political freedom they didn't have in Korea. Koreans launched small businesses like dry cleaners, grocery stores, and later tech startups, restaurants, and medical clinics. These mom-and-pop enterprises became both a means of survival and the cornerstone of economic mobility for the community. Families often work long hours gathering all their resources to send their children to college and fund their next generation. Cultural life also flourished. Korean churches provided them with spiritual support and social connections, while Korean language schools helped preserve heritage and identity. By the late 1980s, the rise of Korean media, food, and culture began to influence mainstream America, which would later turn into the Korean Wave or Hallyu in the 21st century. Not all was easy. However, events like the 1992 Los Angeles uprisings exposed racial tensions and economic hardships, yet also galvanized a new generation of Korean Americans to become activists, artists, and political leaders. The youngest generations now navigate dual identities, being proudly Korean and American, shaping the future of a vibrant and global community. Conclusion. From sugar plantations to tech innovations, over a century of Korean immigration has reshaped what it means to be both Korean and American. Each wave of pioneers, war survivors, and the modern dreamers brought their resilience, faith, and ambition across the Pacific. Their stories remind us that immigration isn't a single journey, but a shared legacy that continues to shape America's story today.